get yourself set up, and then everyone else go ahead and just have to go. Yeah, let's go. Just get it out there. Do it.
Always locked in.
Who's yelling?
My band director followed me to dinner last night at like midnight and then yelled at me in front of other people.
What is this thing here? Whose is this?
Yes, he's recording.
You want this here? Where?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrew Reynolds, Executive Director of Fort Worth Youth Orchestra, and welcome to our spring performance of the Fort Worth Youth Orchestra Jazz. This group is the first full season for them, so they have a fall concert, they have a spring concert, we have a couple outreach things with them. It's been a fantastic first year. And about a year and a half ago, our board sat down and we talked about starting a group like this, and we tried to find somebody fantastic to start it. And the first person that reached out was somebody who's actually a father of a harpist of one of our ensembles. And when we read his resume, we were like, yes, oh my gosh. He's got an incredible pedigree. Ken Debo is our conductor of this group, and he's conducted groups across the country for jazz. He's done he's won like Badman. He's done the military service and done a lot with military jazz bands and a ton of great work. And the kids really enjoy working with him. He's fantastic. And so I'm really excited to present this final concert of our first season for this group, and I hope you really enjoy it. A couple things before we begin. First off, a huge thank you to our board for getting this started, and a big thank you as well to all of our donors that helped. We actually have one donor in the room, Holly Kaiser, that helped with these jazz fronts for this year. They look fantastic. We're really excited about the stage presence that this brings to this group. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to some music. So here's Ken Debo and a Fort Worth Orchestra Jazz.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today, and our final concert for the 412 Orchestra Jazz. Don't they look good? You know they sound great? They sound great. I told you before, I said, you guys look, you look good and sound better. And I said, wait, that doesn't sound right. So we're gonna put them on equal footing on both counts. This may be the 412 Youth Orchestra, but as you can tell by that first tune, they're certainly playing some professional level, grown-up music for sure. This band will continually surprise you with their eagerness and their verve for this wonderful music, America's music. So we're so thankful to 412 Youth Orchestra for the opportunity to play this music and promulgate it throughout our community and beyond. So that was the first tune that we called, that is called Just Friends. It's arranged by a good friend of mine, Ian Charlton, who's the assistant conductor for the Navy Band in the Southeast. And we have another one now by a wonderful composer. Ottawa. Omaha. We're going to do one by a great trumpet player, teacher, educator, and performer, clinician, that you name it, composer, arranger up in New York at Queens College. And this is arranged by Michael Philip Mossman, and this was called Afro Blue. We're going to feature Eli Everett up from a little drum solo. Little, I said. Gotta be careful with drummers. Sunday evening blue. So think of this tomorrow. One, two, one, two, three. Roll trombone, the trombone solo. And there's the major band. Every song is better with a trombone solo, right? That's like, trombone is like the musical bait, I think. I just picked it up and it didn't really go with that well. So we won't do that. Eli didn't help me out, so he's my gauge. So, but even if it was that true, then we would definitely apply to this next tune. But not only the trombone, but we notice that there's something different about this band, and that is that we can add an extra baritone saxophone. Typically one is enough, but in our case, we have to have the bookends here. And so we're going to let both of these wonderful baritone saxophone players go for it. And we'll bring Noah back on here because he has to balance them out, because they need some balance, all right? All right, so we're going to do a great tune from the Maynard Ferguson songbook. It's one that's just been popular for a long time, and it's called Superbone Meets the Badman. bottom dwellers. We got those down here, we got the mountains over here. But you notice on bass trombone, this gentleman is not in high school anymore. Please help me welcome and sitting in on our fabulous bass trombonist, Josh Rose. Had a prior day to it before the season started, and there's nothing that could be done. He could not be here. He's really held it down for us this year. But sitting in for Josh is that big shoes to fill, and this guy's got big feet, right? So this is Mr. Paul Covert on the end there, professional trombonist teacher here in the outfield. And also, you're back there in the back row helping us in the trumpet section here. This is a former Fort Worth Youth Orchestra member who's been playing lead trumpet at TCU, and now he's really getting his education because he's student teaching this semester, right? So this is Floyd Harris, everyone. Please welcome We're going to do another great Latin arrangement. This one is also by Michael Philip Hoffman. This one is entitled What I Feel. ask you or not, you're going to get it. We're really fortunate to have such a wonderful rhythm section. Every chair, in any ensemble, every chair is important, of course. But we're one of the part really here, well, the two Badman. But we're one of the part really in the ensemble, and it's always a give and take balance between the horns and the rhythm section. And you know, at the Forward Youth Orchestra, our mission is not just let's rehearse a couple of songs and put them in a concert at the end, and that's that. No, we have a very deep-rooted, for 60 years, a deep-rooted educational mission to not just help young artists musically, but also to show them those intangible things that are part of music, that all parents who have children who are musicians and all musicians know that the music teaches a lot of other things like discipline and hard work, and it's a great equalizer. Nobody can do it for them. You put that horn to your face or put that instrument under your hands, and it's the work that you put into it that makes it, that makes the product and makes you enrich your life and someone else's. No one can do it for you. So we teach these kind of things during our rehearsals, and we also talk about improvisation, we talk about blend, balance, we talk about, we try to relate music to life a lot of times in our rehearsals, and hopefully out of that, Fort Worth Youth Orchestra wants to really produce not just wonderful artistic musicians, which you can obviously tell are succeeding in that, but also good citizens as well. And so it's part of our mission that we do that. So anyway, what you're upset that I might have forgotten the bass solo and not. But in this bass solo, there's no talking about, okay? For you jazz fans out there. But we're so fortunate, as I started to say, that we have such a wonderful wind section, but also a wonderful rhythm section. They each have their roles, and it's just you can just like switch it on and forget about it. There it is. I know it's there. It's wonderful to have these three gents here. So we're going to feature our bass player Jesse Monalejo on a great tune that was made famous by another bass player who had very similar hair, I would say, Jaco Pastorius. If any of you jazz fans out there, you know Jaco. So this was done by a group called Weather Report, and Jaco Pastorius is the bass solo. It's going to feature some of the other sections as well, but you're going to hear a little bit of his electric bass styling. So let's take it away on Remark You Made. Now, in our rehearsals, there was only a little bit of strife. And it came from the fact that the word orchestra comes before jazz. Oh, wait a minute. So, we have to find a balance there. And so, this is a jazz orchestra, or the Fort Worth Youth Orchestra. So we can't be the Fort Worth Youth Orchestra Jazz Orchestra, right? So we said, you know what? We're fine with that. We're gonna, hey, don't you love these new logos? Can you stand? I got another hand. Looks great. Mr. Reynolds, I thought there was gonna be a trombone in front of this. Back to the printer. There we go, back in. So what we decided to do, and I hope when Dr. G gets wind of this, maybe he will like it, but we decided instead of, to mitigate that orchestra jazz thing, we're actually going to do some orchestra music for you. Because then that makes it right, okay? So we had a lot of things we could do, but we're going to do, I think we had a Mozart selection, there was a Rachmaninoff thing maybe we were going to toss around, there was Bach, but I think we settled on Brahms, didn't we? Who voted for Mozart, you man? Let me see your hands. There's two of you. Oh, you don't want to see one of this now. Who voted for Brahms? Everyone raise your hand if you did. Okay. So we're going to do Hungarian Dance No. 5. Jazz. How about that? Stop one more time on the saxophone. And correct me if I'm wrong, saxophone was originally created for the orchestra, right? Yeah. Wait, that's that one up, right? I don't know what happened. So, have you had a great time this afternoon? Well, we certainly have as well, and we have one more song to do for you. But I just want to thank you again for your support for the Forward Youth Orchestra as a whole, and the many, what is it now, 10, 12 ensembles we have?
10 groups.
10 separate groups, plus we have the Suzuki and the educational arm of it and everything else. And so it does not happen without, first of all, these wonderful young musicians here that you see on the stage behind me, and also for the parents in the audience who do a lot of moving back and forth. So give the parents a hand, man. Let's go, man. Let's go. Let's go. We do a lot of shuffling back and forth and music lessons and renting of instruments and taking, coordinating with band directors and extra ensembles such as this and all kinds of stuff. Oh, did I mention marching band? So there's all the balance and tasks that go into a musical family, so we appreciate that support. And of course, our board and all the support we get from the board and the community. And thank you for coming out to see this wonderful ensemble. If you are, well, first of all, let me also do this. Seniors in the group, stand up. All my senior citizens. Thank you. Thank you, seniors. We appreciate you. We honored them a couple weeks ago after one of our rehearsals, and we have some seniors going to all kinds of wonderful places. There's some going up to University of North Texas. There's some, I think, there's a couple, one at TCU. And we just got word to that, Berkeley College of Music, right? So how about that? The experiences they are gaining here from the Forward Youth Orchestra are going to be going out. And they're going to be, you'll be playing a jazz concert in Boston, and you'll be somewhere, you'll be out there too, won't you, Tristan? At Berkeley, and you guys will be out there, and they're going to be, that's great, weren't you? Well, I was in Fort Worth, and I was at this high school, and we had to sing with the Forward Youth Orchestra Jazz, and guess what? So the legacy, what you're supporting, doesn't just end here on the stage in Kimbell, it goes out. A special thank you to Mr. Andrew Reynolds and also Mr. David Warren. Mike was back there somewhere. He's probably listening from afar, but they help keep everything together, not only our orchestra hall, but we do wonderful events like this. And it is just a joy to have the opportunity, honor really is mine to be associated with this great organization. And finally, Kimbell, what a beautiful setting. And Gabe is back there. You can't see him, but he's back there. You can hear his handiwork right here. So he's back there. Our sound man, how about for Gabe back there? And if you know a young person or have another young person in your family who's in high school and is a musician and shows the drive and the dedication and like I said earlier, that kind of verve for this music. The audition materials are out. Go to our website, FWYO.org, and you can look at the audition materials. Please send it to your local high school band directors and to anyone who is associated with young musicians such as these up here. And we would be happy to take their auditions. They're going to do this summer, and because we have a lot of singers up here. How'd that happen? I don't know. But this is really wonderful. And so thank you again for being here. And we're going to close our program with, that wasn't a joke. Why do when I tell a joke, we don't do it, and when I'm being serious, then you do it. You like it's giving you a hard time. They'll teach you that in college. We're going to do a shout out to where I grew up, and my wife just came in. We both met down in South Carolina, and so this one takes us back to I want you to think of, not the heat and the humidity and the mosquitoes, but I want you to think of the front porch, and I want you to think of it as a nice evening and a relaxing evening. It's a nice, slow ballad. It's going to just make you feel nice and drowsy, right? Drowsy. The name of the song is The Carolina Boogaloo.
sax, EC